So welcome back, everyone. So this session is a fireside chat on how FinTechs are leveraging the cloud in their digitization journey. So joining us in this fireside chat are Amit Gupta, founder and CEO, Rapyder Cloud Solutions, who will also act as a moderator for this dialogue, and Sandeep Laxman, Head FinTech Business Development, Asia Pacific and Japan, Amazon Web Services. So over to you, Amit.
Thank you so much, Gitanjali. First of all, thanks for this opportunity. It's absolutely a pleasure to be part of this panel today. Jack Welch from GE rightly said, change before you have to. 10 years back, I went to watch a movie with my family and handed over my BlackBerry at the ticket counter. The first thing the guy did was swiped at the screen. The very next day, I changed my phone. I was an avid BlackBerry user till then. For businesses to remain relevant, we need to adapt to our customer needs. And today's customer is looking at ease of delivery at home. Till few years back, FinTech for me was a tech at bank branches. We had to visit bank branches multiple times during the month to consume services. In last few years, FinTech has completely changed how banking, lending, stock trading, payment services are delivered. Customers are opening bank accounts, demat accounts, taking macro and micro loans and paying their bills from the comfort of their homes and offices. Today, we hardly visit banks and branches. According to BCG, Indian FinTech value by 2025 is expected to be a whopping 150 billion, which will need over 25 billion investments. Our FinTech community here today wants to create transformative customer experience, create a technology roadmap for value delivery, and create the fastest growing economy of the world. I'm sure we will see many more unicorns emerging over the next few years. I've been either a cloud consumer or a cloud service provider for the last 10 plus years. And in my experience, cloud providers are clearly the undisputed enablers in this digitization story. Today, we have a prominent panelist, Sandy, who at this young age heads FinTech for AWS. Given his role, he has a vantage point, having an engine room view of innovation, both within cloud and in FinTech as an industry. Sandy, based on your experience, can you please share your views on how FinTechs are leveraging the cloud in their digitization story today?
Thanks, Amit. Thank you again for inviting me to this esteemed panel. I feel very humbled, right? You're absolutely right. FinTech is something that's grown really, really fast in the last 2 years, right? Last few years, rather. And it's not just in India, it's across Asia Pacific and Japan. So let me just kind of start off with some numbers, right? And for example, if you take the FinTech funding, the amount of funds that FinTech companies or FinTech startups have raised, let's look at India first, right? So in 2020, they raised about 3.2 billion. In 2021, that's last year, the funding increased by 213% to 10.1 billion. This is as per traction, right? The data sources traction. If you look at APJ, that is Asia Pacific and Japan, totally, you see similar numbers. In 2020, FinTechs across the entire geo raised about 10.8 billion. In 2021, they raised 22.2 billion. That's an increase of 105% across this geography. Now, this is not just late stage companies raising massive rounds. Yes, that is happening. But you also have early stage companies raising rounds. There are more rounds being done. So for example, to give you again a high level view of this. If you compare the number of funding rounds that's happened in 2020 and 2021, it's increased 54%. So it's increased from 759 rounds in FY20 to 895 rounds in 2021. Right? And typically what happens is when money follows, innovation follows, right? It's as simple as that. And one of the things that we have seen, we see a lot of things across, but the adoption of cloud, right? And for our audience here, let me explain what the cloud is. Just like you get electricity at home, how do you get electricity? You don't set up a power station, right? In fact, you don't even know how that happens. You just click a button and the light starts. You click another button, or if you have an Alexa, you ask Alexa to do it for you, and the air conditioning starts, the fan starts, right? Cloud is similar, but for almost any kind of service, right? So from database to compute to analytics to machine learning, You click a few buttons and you can have that service deployed for you. So it abstracts that complexity to manage the technical infrastructure. It just becomes a lot easier, right? For fintechs, one of the things, like you talked about trends, I'll give you a few examples, right? One of the things we're seeing across the geo is collaboration and expansion of payment systems, right? So for example, NPCI talked about how they're going to expand, they're going to offer UPI in Nepal, right? That just came out a few days ago. We also had, NPCI talk, set up a partnership with Apex, which is a part, under MAS, which is the Singaporean regulatory authority, to enable fintech innovation, right? Now, what happens is these kind of partnerships are unique. They are happening for the first time that we're seeing, right? It's not very common, and that breeds to a lot of innovation, right? And how does that happen? Let me give you an example of innovation based on cloud, right? So Perfios, for example, they do document analysis and basis, on documents that you give. And when I mean documents, I mean financial statements, right? I mean invoices. They essentially use that and run a machine learning algorithm on top of that to understand what the customers or end users' credit risk profile is, right? So this is just one example that I'm kind of giving. So we see innovations across AI, we see innovations across analytics, right? We're seeing a lot around security, and especially with Rapyder, right? We've done a whole set of things that we will get onto a little later. But on a high level view, I would say these are the areas that we're essentially seeing innovation at.
Great, Sandy. I think in my personal experience as well, I was part of the pitch session, a few weeks back, because I have an interest in making investments in early startups as well. And what they have done is they have looked at EV as a problem area to see how can we democratize the charging stations, because there's so many companies coming in, and how the energy management can be linked with the payment of electricity consumed. So the micro payment that is being made there is, 5 rupees and 7 rupees. And I think that has been enabled only because of UPI related innovations, which have been brought in by FinTechs, right? Another thing which I've also seen as part of, some research that I was doing, globally, there are about 26,000 FinTechs right now, out of which about 11,000 is in Americas, about 9,500 in EMEA, and about 6,500 in APAC. India is already the third largest FinTech ecosystem out there today.
Yeah.
We saw during the COVID times, it has added a tailwind to the entire innovation, because consumers today are looking to consume all of this sitting at their homes, right? So benefits that, Sandy, you have seen FinTech and customers, specific use cases that you want to talk about, on what did they find beneficial by leveraging cloud?
Right. So let me give you a couple of things, right? So you spoke about, how FinTech is an enabler, right? And that is very true. So if you look at FASTag, right? FASTag is essentially a FinTech solution to a logistics problem. Think about it.
Yeah.
Right? It's a FinTech solution to a logistic problem. That's one example how FinTech can enable, right? Another example is buy now, pay later. It's called buy now, pay later, right? And it's growing all over in several regions, I would say, in Asia Pacific and Japan. If you look at a geography like India, right, there's a vast underserved consumer base, right, that wants access to credit but cannot get credit today, right? And this became even more evident during COVID times, right, where people needed access to credit, right? Now, one of the things that we have seen customers doing is leveraging these for example, building machine learning models and leveraging them to identify what the customer's risk appetite is, right? Basis an entire set of parameters that they have access to, right? So it's not just looking at, hey, let's look at the CIBIL score. It's not just looking at the CIBIL score. It's a different level of analysis. Now, what that enables is very interestingly, is that it allows them to adapt very quickly to changes on the ground.
Yeah.
Right? Because, for example, when COVID happened, consumer behavior has changed dramatically. Right? It's changed dramatically. So because we were all like, especially when we had the lockdowns last year, moratoriums were announced last year in the fintech ecosystem, for the financial ecosystem in India, the consumer behavior shifted rapidly, right? And one of the things that fintechs needed to do is adapt to that, right? And we saw a whole set of innovations. One is, for example, deployment of KYC platforms, right? Everyone wanted to do eKYC. Everyone wanted to do video KYC, because in financial services, if you cannot do KYC, you cannot do a transaction. It's as simple as that, right? It's the very first thing that you want to do, right? Similarly, another thing that came up is because everyone was, because of having things go online so fast last couple of years, the transactions that happened through UPI also went through the roof, right? So what we also noticed is, for example, banks like Yes Bank moved their UPI workloads to the cloud, right? So Yes Bank did that last year. Why? They want to have that scale, right? The cloud gives you that ability to scale up and scale down very quickly, very easily, right? And that's something that fintechs, financial services companies want to leverage.
Absolutely. Another example, which is very recent, is if you look at Arogya Setu app itself, right? Massive deployment at scale globally to manage vaccinations in India. So it's not relevant from a fintech standpoint, but from cloud specifically, the scale at which the application was able to grow to take care of more than 120 crore, 125 plus crore vaccinations, it could be delivered only because it was in the back end using cloud as the engine. I think my personal experiences have been also, if you look at Zerodha as an app, I was recently opening a Demat account and was absolutely flabbergasted to see that in 5 minutes sitting at my desk, I was able to open a Zerodha account, right? I went to, my daughter is getting, she's 18 plus now, and getting into learner's license, all the learner's licenses are digitized now. And there was a facial recognition based on which the authentication was done. And that is, again, all of that is getting delivered because of, cloud and AI playing a role behind that. So clearly, fintech is, at the core of a lot of these services, because it has made the payments, finance exchange much easier, enabling all other segments to innovate as well. So in my experience, whether you are modernizing the core systems, launching spin-offs at unprecedented speeds, cloud is something that can be relied to ideate, iterate, and innovate seamlessly. And all of this while meeting stringent security, compliance, and regulatory requirements, which are kind of built in as far as in cloud is concerned, right? There's naturally applications that have to take care of security aspects of it as well. So on a different note, Sandy, AWS has a very large partner network, right? And this is something which partner teams of AWS are constantly also investing by engaging and enabling partners. Why do you think fintech should leverage that?
Right. So, one of the things you mentioned, something very interesting, right? You talked about the level of security that the cloud can provide. And one of the things that actually comes in is the other customers also using, right? When you have major banks, in India, the likes of RBL, you have Axis globally, you have the likes of Goldman Sachs, right? When these banks use, the thing is they use it. One of the key reasons they want to also use it is make sure the security meets their bar, right? So security for us, for example, is job zero in AWS. Now, what happens with partners is partners proof are a very important part of AWS, right? We work with partners across different customers, and the reasons is multiple things, right? One is, for example, some partners come with competency. For example, I think if I'm not mistaken, Rapyder has how many? 3 competencies, if I'm not mistaken, Amit?
We are going to get the 4th one very, very soon. Just got audited for it.
Awesome. Awesome. Looking forward to that, right? And what happens is and those competencies just one program, right? That's one program that I'm speaking about. In addition, we got several other programs. We got a well-architected program, well-architected partner program, right? We have the APN customer engagement program. So let me dive deep on a couple of these, right? So APN customer engagement program is where partners essentially work with AWS to directly to collaborate with AWS to co-sell with us to drive successful engagements with our customers, right? And that comes in multiple forms. So number one is on the top of the mind is migrations, right? So like I said, Yes Bank migrated their UPI workload to AWS. Right, that has to be done by somebody, right? There is a partner involved to do it. And the reason a partner is involved is because our partners, once they develop competencies, for example, or once they work with few of the customers, it becomes, increases trust for us. And then the co-sell motion becomes a lot more easier, right? So migrations is one example for one place, for example, where partners add a lot of value, right? Helping customers move to the cloud. They come with the best practices. They have worked with other customers. They work with, so you work let's just take Rapyder as an example, right? You guys have worked with so many customers, right? There's a lot of learning that is there with you that the end customer can benefit from, right? That is one example, right? The other example is the different competencies we spoke about, right? So which are the competencies, for example? You have, I believe, 3, which were,
so we are, digital workplace is one, which is how do you take your workloads, web workloads or your client server workloads on servers and manage it remotely. We also have Windows on AWS. We also are a DevOps competency partner, and recently got audited for migration. And good that you brought migration conversation, because it's a complex area, right? So when we are going, even though we have been working with AWS, has helped over 400 plus customers, 700 plus use cases. We got audited. We started our migration journey only early last year. It took us 8 months of working together with AWS to get ready to even be audited. So that is the kind of due diligence that goes behind the scene by AWS and third-party vendors to get the partners ready. But it changed the game, right? So last year we got involved in more than 5-7 large conversations, which we are talking about 300 to 700 VM-based migrations. And as a partner, it also gives us the confidence in our ability to execute those projects successfully now. So yeah, those are the 3-4 competencies. There are about 9 service delivery programs that we have been audited for as well.
Yeah, and I would love, we have a financial services competency, right? And one of the things that we also look for, if you have a partner who's got the financial services competency, it makes it very easy for us to recommend. And the reason is what you said, right? There's this long process you have to go through to get that competency, right? It essentially means that you meet a certain bar for AWS, right? And that's just one example, one way in which AWS helps partners, upskill, take them to market, co-sell, and as well as benefiting the end customer, right, which is the main goal. Another example I can talk to you about is the well-architected partner program, right? So security, for example, you spoke about security, and I told earlier that security is job zero in financial services, in FinTech, right? It's really important. If you're in FinTech, you have to have really high security. Right now, one of the ways we can do it, we have multiple ways we do it. Number one, for some of our big customers, we do a detailed well-architected, we got something called the well-architected program, and we got something called the well-architected review. So we might do that. But the other way we do is we have partners like Rapyder, for example, that will help, that will do the well-architected review on our behalf. Right, and the well-architected review, will analyze the end customer's infrastructure, not just on security, but 5 other parameters. Right, there's cost, there's fault tolerance, there is elasticity. Right, essentially 5 different pillars that we have. And what this does is, because you have been, you've gone through the training, a team has gone through the training. It helps us reach a wider set of customers as well. It helps us help a larger set of customers, right? And this is something like we are quite keen on doing. Like security is really important. So especially in fintech. So yeah, these are just some of the ways that that AWS helps partners, and how partners can work with our customers as well.
Thank you so much, Sandy. I think last year in reInvent, there's another thing which has been launched specifically focused towards fintech ISVs. Companies that are taking fintech products in a B2B model to other businesses called FTR, which is a functional and technical review, which enables you to become a authorized ISV on the AWS marketplace as well. So that is another elevation of the entire well-architected review that you just talked about. And AWS and partners are kind of helping fintech ISVs to also elevate that conversation there. Also, data analytics, if you coming back to the cloud side of things, Sandy, so data analytics and AI has to play an extremely important role in terms of customer acquisition, customer onboarding, retention, and what kind of areas is AWS or services that AWS is coming up to help customers in these elements.
So yeah, data is really important in fintech, right? Let me give you an example. We spoke about buy now, pay later a little while earlier, right? Now, this is for a segment that is typically underserved, and as a result, the availability of data might not be that high, right? From traditional sources, right? They might not all have a CIBIL score, for example, right? You have to depend on alternate data sources, right? It could be the graph data. It could be the number of people that they connected to. It could be who they connected to. It could be, what does their bank account statement look like for the last few months, right? Is it a steady income? Is it fluctuating? If it fluctuates, how it fluctuates, right? And what happens is all this has to be crunched to give you a final output that tells the lender whether they can extend the line of credit to them or not, right? This is a perfect example where you could either use analytics. So a lot of cases we see fintech start with analytics. They'll spin up a Redshift server, they'll run analytics on it, and then decide how whom they should give a line of credit to. But the other thing that we're seeing now is this motion of going from analytics to machine learning, right? So they build these custom models that helps them make better predictions, right? Because they want to do two things. Number one is they don't want to give loans to people who might default, right? Because they want to keep their defaults at the minimum. At the same time, they don't want to reject good customers as well, right? So there's a very fine line that you have to cross, right? That is one example. The other example is fraud, right? Fraud detection is a big part. And this also comes as, as a byproduct of in anything, whether it's payments, whether it's lending, right? So I'll give you an example, right? So there's a fintech called PaySense in lending, right? It was acquired by PayU a couple of years ago. And what they did is they created this graph. They used our graph database called Neptune, right? And they mapped out customers. And through that graph, they had 330 million people connected through billions of connections, right? On top of that, they overlaid their data and they ran their model using SageMaker. So SageMaker is our machine learning service, which essentially makes it very easy for you to train, build, run models, right? To ensure that the models keep getting updated, right? So they ran a SageMaker model on top of that. And when they did that, what they were able to do is, basis the data, they were able to fine tune to identify fraud rings, right? Basis the size of how fast the ring grows, they were able to find out where's the fraud ring and then decide, oh, this customer is in this vicinity of a fraud ring, and then make a decision whether a line of credit has to be given or not, right? It's a very interesting solution to fraud, right?
Yeah, really.
And one of the things that the CEO Prashant actually said is that, if they had to do it by themselves, it would have taken them 18 months to do it, right? 18 months. And on the other hand, just in a few months, I think like 3 to 6 months, they were able to deploy the model, and then iterate it over a few times already, right? To a state where, it was actually deployable to production, right? And that has got a direct effect on the bottom line, because the better you can identify fraud, the lower your NPAs are going to be. And that is the gold standard for any lending company.
So that use case is a clear example of a cloud enabler, how cloud can enable a faster GTM, reducing the risks for businesses that want to adopt out of the box solutions which are already available on the AWS services, right? Fantastic example. Also, from a customer journey management, Sandy, we came across a very interesting service called AWS Pinpoint, which allows you to kind of manage customer journey across multiple channels, whether that be SMS, email, WhatsApp, push notification as well. Do you want to throw some light on that too?
Yeah, so there is a lot of data there, right? So for example, number one, if you look at FinTechs, or financial services companies, many times they're mandated by regulation to keep the customer informed, right? To communicate to the customer. So that's the reason you get an SMS when you do a transaction, right? If you do a UPI payment, or you do a credit card transaction, debit card transaction, if you have a loan, if you have an insurance, you get those SMSs. Many of them are mandated by the regulator themselves, right? But in addition, companies also use them to upsell and cross-sell, right? Now that data is actually very useful. And based on that data, what we've seen is, I can't talk about specific use cases here, but customers essentially use Pinpoint to upsell and cross-sell basis the data that they have, right? So they run campaigns essentially, so to speak. The advantage for them is they don't just do it across SMS. So we have a lot of customers using using Pinpoint for SMS in particular, but they could do it across multiple services, right? You could do it SMS, you could do it for emails, you could do it for in-app notifications, right? So the advantage is you could create the customer journey and the journey that you want, right? You spoke about Zerodha, for example, right? Now, the onboarding journey is so easy, right?
Seamless, yeah, absolutely.
Seamless. And that is the key, right? In financial services, a lot of times the onboarding journey is not as simple as what it should be, right? And you see that with, some of the traditional players, right? FinTechs, on the other hand, because they come using the cloud, they can create a much more nimbler journey, right? They can take it step by step, right? They can push the customer when required, right? And a lot of that is based on analytics that they run. A lot of that is based on the models that they run, right? So I'll give you a very good example of this, right? Let's say you are a lender, right? And let's say that lender has, a customer reached out for a loan, but you saw the risk was too high and you didn't give him a loan. But for some reason or the other, that risk has now reduced. Maybe he didn't have a job and he's got a job, right? Now, what I've seen some of the FinTechs doing is actually they take that data out, right? And then they send a customized notification to that person saying that, hey, your credit risk has changed, your risk score has changed. They don't say credit risk, of course. Your credit score has changed. And now you are eligible for these products, right? You're eligible for this much of a loan, right? That is brilliant because many times the customers don't know it, right? So this is one such example.
Great. I think another one, we were working with one of the customers on Pinpoint. Another very interesting, insights that he shared was typically when you look at other aggregators, FinTechs or other customers need to share their customer data for them to be able to send all these notifications out. With Pinpoint coming in, all that data is securely sitting in the same AWS account and the customer information is not getting shared with anybody. Stopping any pilferage that can happen in that area, right? So that's also is a data security aspect of which was an interesting insight that customer brought in.
Yeah, no, absolutely. You're absolutely right. That's in fact that quite often comes up during our conversations as well. We've noticed that in multiple occasions. So what happens is they want to it's PII data, right? your phone numbers, your email addresses, that's PII data. And regulators have a certain level of requirement on how to store that PII data, right? The fact that you are able to use AWS service means that you could keep the same level of security that you have for the rest of your infrastructure also on this. So in fact, Zero that had that issue there, and I think Kailash has written a blog post on it, where they identified that there was actually one of their SMS providers was actually leaking information, right? So yeah, they did face that issue. So it does happen, and yeah, if it's with AWS, of course, you could do like a level of security, or through partners, right? You're one of them, for example.
So interesting conversation. I know, Gitanjali, we just wanted to check how we are doing on time. If you could take a few questions before we wrap up. My observation or learning from this particular conversation has been clearly that there are many resources, solutions available for innovation and acceleration. We need to ask ourselves, are we leveraging what is available to us from cloud enablers and partner ecosystem, or are we building everything ground up? How are we accelerating the business and GDN? That's my learning or takeaway from today's session. Gitanjali, over to you.
So I think we can move on to the questions now. They're already there.
So yeah, I see a question on what are the key strategies offered by AWS for FinTechs. I think by strategies you mean programs, right? So one is, if you're a FinTech, if that's okay, I can take that question, address that question first, if that's okay.
Sure.
Yeah. So one of the things, for example, we offer is, if you're a startup, I mean FinTech, but if you're a startup, essentially we have the Activate program, right? And the Activate program essentially gives you access to AWS credits, so that the initial infrastructure, you can build it on your own. You don't have to spend money, right, building the initial infrastructure. And as you raise funding up to Series A, you could get more and more credits to build it. In addition, I spoke about some of the programs like the partner program. So we have partners like Rapyder over here who help FinTechs also build their infrastructure. The other thing which we have seen is security and compliance, right? So one of the things that FinTechs want to do is they want to make sure that their architecture that they built, that they started off, is well architected. It's got high availability. It's not going to go down. The probability that it's going to go down is going to be less. It is secure. So we do the well-architected review for that. So there's an architecture review which happens, and that could happen either directly with AWS or with partners, right? So quite often it's our partners who come in, like Rapyder, and essentially do those reviews. The third one is a migration to AWS. Is a Migrate program where we help startups move to the cloud. So if either you're not on AWS or you are on premise or colocation, we'll bring in a partner like Rapyder over here and help you move to the cloud, and there are benefits that get attached to that as well, right? It's a co-sell motion that for us. And like Amit just said, they're working on the migration competency. So I'm very much excited about that.
Thank you, Sandy. So I'll take the second question. This is about what are the key things that a startup should consider before embarking on cloud journey? And if time has come to start cloud, then which area to pick and how to start? I think some of this, Sandy, you have addressed as well. But typically, if you're a business who is already seeing big traction from a customer standpoint, and scale is becoming an issue for you, I think that should be the first trigger point to serve your existing customers. Now, naturally, you don't want to be in a situation where this happens and then you start ideating about cloud, right? So you should start experiencing that today if you're already not doing it, by moving your possibly dev test workloads and start experiencing it. I think based on the program that Sandy indicated, from Activate to credits, and a lot of support is available for you to experience, where you may or may not be, you may not carry any cost initially for that experimentation. So I think I'll rest that with that second question. I think the third question is...
Sorry, if we can add one more thing, right? So if it's, when it comes to migrations, right, I want to give an example. So on how big the benefits are. So we migrated a customer called Atom Payments a few years ago, right? And typically what happened is we did a lift and shift in the first step of the migration. And when they did it, what happened is a lot of times, especially if you're on-prem or co-located, your hardware might be very old. So they come to a much newer hardware. Right. So number one, your utilization of CPU goes down. So your costs are lesser. You have to use less VMs, right? At the same time, they are a lot faster. So in Atom's case, what happened was they used to have a business risk where because their systems also were old on premise, at the end of the day, when they had to reconcile the payments, that would sometimes time out because it would take more around 90 minutes, right? And it would time out. They moved it to AWS. And the reconciliation happened in 2 minutes. That business risk was eliminated, right? Think about that. A technology innovation, a technology, transformation completely eliminated a business risk, right? So the CEO was so happy. He said, "Man, this is awesome. I never expected this to happen," right? So this is just one such example of how and why you have to use a cloud in addition to scale, right? It just improves performance, efficiency of your entire technology.
So that reminds me, Sandy, of another use case. We were working with one of the mapping companies, and they used to collect all data, run it on-prem on about 7 servers for 18 to 20 days before it will give you an output. So Rapyder went in, created a spot solution completely. And on the day of test, we launched 300 spot instances in Mumbai region. And the entire process was completely finished from start to end in 6 hours, from 18 to 20 days, right?
Wow.
So scale, wherever you're looking at scale, and if you could break down your workloads into smaller components and run all of that in a distributed structure, is an area that you can definitely, look at cloud for. Among a lot of other things, if you look at AMD costing, Graviton, which has been brought in, your Intel costing to AMD to Graviton, there's a clear 20 to 25% reduction that you will see on your compute itself. And if you go into details, you talk about serverless and lambdas and EKS and ECS. I think we can talk about another hour if we go hardcore into technology areas. So yeah, a lot of areas that cloud can help. Start with dev test if you have not experienced that before. Get comfortable and expand, right? So land into that, experience it and expand is what we typically recommend our customers. The last question that I have, with me is, it says that I agreed that you study CIBIL score. You're using AI and studying clients' transactions. BNPL may lead to mis-selling or enabling the customers who are not affordable to use certain services. Do you think we may have similar issues to what we have seen in mortgage bubble in US? Sandy, can you take that, please?
Yeah, so look, we enable the FinTechs, right? So in the end, it's in the FinTech's best interest to take the right decisions, right? At the end of the day, we help provide the services that they can leverage. Right? I think a better way to look at it is, financial inclusion is very important, right? Our government also speaks about this. The only way you're going to be able to do financial inclusion is if you get disparate data sources which don't exist today, bring them together, and basis on that, make a decision. Right now, there is a feature in SageMaker which allows you to update your model regularly. Right, so it can identify whether your model is deviating from your parameter. So let me put it this way. Remember when I spoke about COVID and I said that customer behavior changed, right? And we all know it's changed during that. Now, what happened is the model started deviating, right? And that's when you get bad decisions on whom to get loans because your model hasn't taken into account. Your model is deviated and you don't know, right? SageMaker, for example, has a feature where it can identify how much a model has deviated and if it has deviated. Right now, that kind of a feature is very useful to identify whether your model is up to date, or you need to retrain it, or you need to have more data sources coming in. Right. So at the end of the day, I would say it is a lot of it's a lot about data. Right. It's about how you process data, how well you can keep your model updated. Can you update it frequently? Right? Can you identify deviations that occur? I would say it comes more down to that.
So, good point there, Sandy. I think I was working with one of the founders. If these thing is not managed well at the entry level, on a lighter note, it also opens up opportunity for FinTechs to get into NPA collection as well. So what they're doing is, instead of going after the traditional collection method, they are using technology, AI, ML to see how can I reach out to this particular consumer who probably does not intend to do a default, but because he's not getting the right communication, he's missing on his payments. So the downstream effect is it opens up more opportunities too, but at the cost to the bank or whoever is the lender there, right? So.
Yeah. We do a FinTech event called FinTech Forum, the AWS FinTech Forum, and Ashish from Zest Money actually spoke about this, right? He spoke about how, for, collections, that they have multiple ways, right? They remind the customer, right? And they've actually found it as a very useful way because, like you said, a lot of customers, we have a lot of things going on in our lives.
Yeah.
And we just miss. Right? I know it happens, right? Everyone knows it happens. So, it is actually enabling the customer, making his life easier to remember, hey, a payment has to be made. Don't forget about it.
And then giving a choice of the channel to make the payment back as well. They are trying to simplify all of that too. I know, Gitanjali, I think we are over time. I don't have any more questions, Gitanjali, I believe. So anything, Sandy, for the closing?
No, I had a fantastic discussion, and looking forward to working with a lot of startups and working more with you, Amit, and your team.
Thank you so much, Sandy. Over to you, Gitanjali.
Yeah, thank you so much, Amit, and thank you, Sandeep, for this brilliant discussion. So we're now moving on to our next panel. And to join us, go on agenda and click on the next session. So don't forget to satiate your networking cravings by clicking on People tab to meet with our partners and other delegates on the platform. We'll be right back with you. Thank you.
5 मिनट में अकाउंट सेटअप और ट्रेडिंग शुरू। हाँ कर सकते हैं। नहीं कर सकते। लगी शर्त और हारा तो It's possible with CoinSwitch Kuber. Download करो और Bitcoin trading start करो. CoinSwitch Kuber, सिक्का चमकेगा.
Cryptocurrency is an unregulated digital asset, not a legal tender and subject to market risks and price fluctuation risks.
Where there is life, there is hope, there is meaning. But life has its downs as much as its ups. Life is about challenges. Life is about opportunities. Time for joy, time for celebration, and time to introspect. Thankfully, in every one of life's moments, and even beyond life itself, there's LIC. Where there is life, there's always LIC. Zindagi ke saath bhi, zindagi ke baad bhi.
Welcome to Fago, a pioneer in the world of intelligent open finance. With our full-stack open finance platform, we enable companies to understand their users' financial behavior across various use cases, making finance engaging and actionable. Fago's developer-friendly product stack helps clients with friction-free user onboarding and authentication using trusted account information. Connect and aggregate your users' banking transaction data from any source, either any of the account aggregators or directly from any core banking solution at flexible intervals. Enrich and categorize transaction data using machine learning algorithms to extract deep behavioral attributes of your users. Understand and act on real-time insights powered by your users' behavior for a variety of use cases ranging from lending, wealth, income verification, frauds, to even branding and marketing insights. Engage with your users by embedding our personal finance management SDK in your existing user-facing app to push positive financial habits and personalize financial insights to your users. If you are looking to engage or understand your user base's financial behavior to take informed decisions, Faygo is your perfect partner. With the complete Faygo suite, you can now capture what drives your users at every stage of their journey and use it to drive your growth. Plug into Faygo and let us do the heavy lifting for you.